Hi everyone, it's Blair here at Time Trades, coming at you with this week's video. So there's been a few new developments this week and further development on the cheat code script. So I'm going to spend some time talking about that and sharing what I've learned in looking at that and interpreting that. And also want to give you an update on the latest round of forecasts from the Time Trades machine learning engine. So we'll start there. Let's start with the Qs. Now, one of the highlights is this big cluster of forecast pivot highs for this Friday, November 19th, and also the following Monday, November 22nd. So these have been there for a while now. And have been pretty stable at right now they're 72% probability and 92% probability. So very high probability of a pivot high coming up. And of course, that's coming after this amazing bull run that we've had basically since October 4th, and it blasted up to November 5th. Now, November 5th, interestingly, is showing as a pivot high here. So, but this is not detected or labeled as an actual pivot high in the system. The reason for that and how I know is if you want to look at the auto detected pivots, you can just turn on GAN fans, right? And GAN fans will tell you which price points are detected as actual pivots. So as we scroll through this, we can see the last pivot high is back on May 12th. So the machine learning is using that as basically a declared pivot low, and it's associating the astrology at that time with pivot lows. So coming through to this November 5th date, this date here, even though it looks like a pivot high, it's still considered a forecast pivot high. Same with these dates, September 7th. Same with these dates. Okay, so it's very encouraging to see these pivot highs aligning with price behavior. Okay, so let's turn off GAN fans. And we will go back, take a look at this. So we've got coming up this Friday, we've got a forecast pivot low. These tend to be the most reliable of the forecasts in the system compared to moves up and moves down. And they also tend to act as magnets. Okay, so I would expect price this week to be mostly in a downtrend towards the Friday, Monday area, at least on the QQQs. Okay, so let's go and take a look at the Qs from the standpoint of the new cheat code script that I created. So this script is based on lunar cycles, and it draws green periods and purple periods on the screen. And these are areas of similarity in the lunar cycles. And it's really interesting when you look at these, when you look at lots of these, you start to see some common patterns. So one of the cool things about this script is it goes all the way back to like 1985. So we can just scroll backwards. Let's go back to, hey, why don't we go back to the 2000s, okay? And when we take a look at this, we can see some common sort of patterns of behavior. The first one that I've noticed, and I'm sure every stock is different, but at least when it comes to the Qs, during the green phases, if price at the start of a green box is low, it tends to finish on a high. That's the first thing I've noticed. So here, look at this green box in 2003. Starts at the low end of the green box. Of course, at this time, we don't know that it is a low. But as time goes on, that low holds. So by here, we can probably be pretty confident that this is going to be the low of the green box. So we can also be confident that it's likely going to finish on a high. The other pattern that I've seen is, something like this, where there's a big inflection point right around the middle. Now, this line is not the geometric middle of the green box. It's again, it relates to the lunar cycles. But here we can see price starts at a low, goes up, hits the middle point of the cycle, and then that is a big pivot and it ends on a low. Okay, so that's another common behavior that we tend to see. So let's look at this one. Starts on a high, and by a high, I mean, I'm not looking at the day the green box starts. I'm looking at kind of the first quarter to an eighth or so of the green period. So it starts on a high, comes down, hits the middle period, inflection, and reverses and finishes right about the middle of the price range. Let's look at the next one. Scroll over here, we're now in 2004, 2005, starts close to a high. Cannot make a higher high, goes down to the midpoint. It doesn't pivot on the midpoint, but it pivots a few days afterwards. And then it bumbles along the bottom, and then it finishes at a low. So again, we see that start at a high, finish on a low behavior. Now, what about the purples? Purples seem to be periods of basing, not a lot of trending. We see the bigger moves tend to be either in green boxes or in the periods between green and purple. Let's see if we can find some examples of that. So here's a great example of what I mean by trending, right? Start at a high, boom, down to more or less the midpoint, attempts a recovery, fails, and makes a lower low, okay? So this is a great example of kind of green box trending behavior, and contrast that with some of the choppy purple behavior interrupted by a couple of big up days. Here's another good example of choppy purple behavior, kind of choppy consolidation. And then when we get into the green, we start to see a bit more trending. Yeah, and then sometimes in purple, we see these big periods of volatility here. That's in 2007. So we're coming into the global financial crisis now. This is where we start to see, again, this is an example of trending. Trending can actually be down as well. So this is probably the peak of the financial crisis crash, September 2008. Big swoosh down to October, attempted recovery at the midpoint, rejected, and then lower low in November. So again, we're seeing these big trends during the green periods. Really interesting stuff. And to be honest, I haven't quite put my finger on how to best trade this. But I think the most repeatable pattern tends to be that start at a low, end at a high, or start at a high, end at a low, and then combined with a reversal point right around the midpoint line. There's also some element of symmetry here. So if you imagine kind of folding this green box over, you can see there's a low here at about the 1/8 of the way in, and then there's a high here about 1/8 of the way before the end. So you can see there's an element of symmetry here around that midpoint. So super interesting stuff. And this is all available for you to use and integrate into your trading view. It works with any stock or crypto, although the behavior will be different. I'll leave it up to you to do the behavior analysis similar to what I'm doing right now. Just basically look for patterns. Look for patterns in price. Here we are now back in 2021, looking at what's happened recently in the recent green periods. Big reversal and pivot back here in March, almost on the day. And this is an example of starting the green box near a high, going to a higher high, coming down into the midpoint, reversing, and then finishing very strong with a higher high. And then we can see something similar here. Start on the low end of the green box, not a lot of movement, not or upwards trending action until we get about 3/8 of the way in, and then we start to see a push up into the midpoint, and then there's a correction to about 3/4 of the way through, and then but we can make an educated guess here that because we started on a low, at this point, given, we've seen a low here in July 2021, we made another low on October 4th. We know there's still lots of green box left. When this starts to reverse, we can start to anticipate a solid bull run coming up in to finish the green box, and that's what we've got left. So there's a little bit of guesswork, of course. It is a stock market. There's an element of guesswork in all of this, but I find breaking it down into these periods of generally trending markets and generally choppy markets is super helpful for me at least, and I hope it is for you as well. Okay, so let's go back to time trades and take a look at the models list. We can pick out some of the top 3 here. I've already got my models sorted by the activity rating for the next 5 days. Number 1 on the list here is XME. This is the mining and metal sector. So we can take a look at this guy and see what it's telling us for the next week. It's got a very nice combination of 5-day up increases, including a 98% probability on Wednesday, I believe, November 18th. No, I think that'd be Thursday. Yes, that's Thursday, the 18th. Okay, so a very bullish week looking ahead. And what I like to see is this in combination with a pivot high up here on November 26th. So this is a very bullish for the mining and metal sector overall. So if we go back to the models page and do a quick scan down, we can see a miner here, Freeport-McMoRan or FCX. Let's see if that is also confirming. And it is. We've got a very big sequence of forecast up days here. Again, starting this week, starting on Tuesday, up, high probability of moves of a 1 standard deviation move up with a little probability, 8% probability here of a pivot high on Monday, the 22nd. So both Freeport-McMoRan and the XME index are confirming each other. That's kind of what we want to see. What else can we see here that's interesting? We can click on Facebook and take a look at that. So here we've got Facebook. It looks like it's got a low probability pivot low for November 15th. And that is confirmed also by a down day. So we've got a 75% probability of a 1 standard deviation down move on Monday, and then some more volatility, and then the next pivot low is coming up November 30th. So if we go and take a look at some of the other FANG stocks, like I know Amazon has a big probability down move forecast for tomorrow as well. So there's a 2 standard deviation move down in Amazon for Monday. So this is kind of what I want to see, is this sort of like confluence between the FANG stocks and that QQQ forecast, which shows that big pivot low coming up. And the last one we'll look at here on the stock side is Google. Take a look at Google. We've got probability of a 2 standard deviation down day of 35% on Friday the 19th. So again, that tends to confirm the QQQ forecast. So we'll wrap up today's video with a quick look at crypto. The Bitcoin forecast is not super clear at the moment. We've got probability of a few down days coming up, but the big highlight seems to be this December 6th date of a pivot low, 43% probability of a pivot low. Again, these tend to act as magnets, and we will see what how price develops as we get closer and closer to this. But one of the things I like to do is just take a look at Bitcoin with these with the new cheat code script and see what that looks like. And let's see where December 6th lies. December 6th is kind of late in the purple, right? So what's really interesting with Bitcoin, and I'd encourage you to look at this yourself, is again, the green boxes tend to be areas of trend where price is trending. Between green and purple is where we tend to see the dramatic moves. That's where we saw the dump back in May. Purple was an area of consolidation and recovery, and then that actually extended into the next green period, and then we got a couple of traditional Bitcoin pumps. So in general, that's the pattern I'd look for here. It looks flat to bearish for the next few weeks as we work our way through the purple period, and hopefully as we get closer to the green period, we can see a strong base on which we can launch a few more Bitcoin pumps. Okay, so that's Bitcoin, and we'll wrap things up with a quick look at Ethereum. Again, not a lot of activity in the near term in the Ethereum forecast. A little pivot low coming in November 27th, and then another one further out, December 16th. That's about a 16% pivot low on December 16th. And December 16th, as we can see here, is basically the start of the next green period. So expectations kind of muted on the upside for on the crypto side. There might even be more of a correction as we come in through this purple period. But I think whatever corrections do happen, we'll look for a pivot and reversal higher starting in mid-December, once we get into the next green period, which is where the trends tend to get started. Okay, that's it for me. I hope you found this helpful. Thanks again for using time trades, and we'll talk again next week. Bye now.